Peace Corps, or if you have met with another Peace Corps volunteer before. So you're going to meet all 5 of us, including Jay, since he also served as a volunteer too. So we have an exciting event stored for you today. And throughout this session, please feel free to stay engaged with us, whether it's using emojis as a reaction, or if you have any questions come up, please do use that chat box. And I will be monitoring that, as well as I have a moderator here today. Sakina is also going to be looking at the chat box as well. So with that said, let me go ahead and share my screen. Can folks see it? Okay, thank you, Brianna. Wonderful. So we are going to go through just some introductions. Again, Sakina and I will be, I will be doing the presentation. Sakina will be doing the chat box viewing, as well as moderating some of the questions. And then hopefully at the 25-minute mark, we're hoping to pass it along to 2 of our amazing panelists who are joining us here today. So just as a quick intro, let's, Sakina, if you want to take the floor and just introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Привет. Меня зовут Sakina Lee. Дуже приємно. That means hello. My name is Sakina Lee. And it's really nice to meet you. And that language is from Ukraine. I served in Ukraine in 2004, 2005, so a little while ago. And one of the best aspects of serving is learning the culture and language from the people. And so I love sharing that when I start off. And that's something that you can learn too when you join the Peace Corps, learning language. I worked on various different projects, but my primary project was working at a recertification institute where teachers would come every 5 years to be recertified to teach. And so I would work with them, teach them the newest and best practices of teaching English language. And then also I would teach at universities, as well as K through 12 as sample classes, so teachers can observe how I do what I'm asking them to do. And so that's part of it. And then of course we have secondary projects. Those are things that we do if we have extra time, or if the community is asking for help in other areas. So one of the areas that I worked on was national curriculum with the Ministry of Education. Every time I say Ministry of Education, I always think Ministry of Magic, maybe just because I love Harry Potter, and I read Harry Potter. I think the 4th or 5th book came out when I was in Ukraine, and so I got to read it in Ukrainian, which was really cool and exciting. So I always like to say, yeah, I did work with the Ministry of Magic out there. At least I called it that. And I did a bunch of other things. And I'm excited to be here and be your moderator. So feel free to put all those questions in the chat box, and I'll answer as much as I can, and forward those questions on to some of our panelists that we're going to have here. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for that intro, Sakina. And then here we have 2 amazing panelists who are here with us today. So Brianna, if you would like to go on mute or off mute and introduce yourself.
Sure thing. Ooh. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. My name is Brianna Maltez. I'm pronouns she, her, and hers. I served in Mozambique from 2014 to 2016 as a health volunteer, specifically with community health and education regarding HIV/AIDS and malaria. In Mozambique, they speak Portuguese, and I lived with the Makua tribe, so I also spoke a little bit of Makua, which is the Bantu language that tribe spoke. As Sakina mentioned, there are tons of different secondary projects that you can do if you have the time, and they're kind of the way that you bring your own passions and hobbies and interests and things like that. So I did Juntush, I did Reddish, I did English theater. The first 2 of those are sort of youth kind of empowerment groups and stuff like that, both for girls and then also kind of co-ed. English theater is exactly what it sounds like. It's theater in English, and so helping kind of kiddos work on their English through theater and everything. So yeah, excited to be here with you all today, and I'm going to be talking a whole bunch later on, so I'm going to keep my introduction brief and short.
And my name is Alex. I'm the final panelist, I believe. And I served in the Dominican Republic, in the Caribbean. My main project was working with the government in the region where I live on a waste management, or to improve their waste management infrastructure. I also was able to teach environmental education in 4th through 6th grade, which was really fun, but very challenging, and honestly gave me a lot of respect for teachers out there, people in the educational field. And yeah, Spanish was the main spoken language in the Dominican Republic. And yeah, and I can't wait to share more about that, and also about, the dynamics of culture and history regarding the island of Quisqueya.
Thank you so much, Alex and Brianna, for your intros. And so today you already can see that we're joined by just so many different sector volunteers. We have business volunteer, education, and I also was part of the health program. So if any of you here today would just want to hear a little bit more about what each of these sectors entail, and what, really the day-to-day life was like as a volunteer within those sectors, please feel free to ask those questions too. All right, so let me see if I can go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so what is Peace Corps? So Peace Corps is an international service opportunity where volunteers get to live and work abroad in communities for a total of 27 months. And during this 2-year commitment, volunteers are living and working in a rural community, learning the local language, as you already heard from some of our panelists and from Sakina, learning Ukrainian, learning Spanish, or maybe you already know another language such as Spanish or French, and you're using that to integrate into that community. And so community integration is a very big piece of what Peace Corps volunteers do. And through that process, they also work alongside the community counterparts and the villagers on impact-driven and sustainable projects. And so currently we have over 60 countries where volunteers have served. And a really big key point of our programs is that Peace Corps only operates in those countries where we are only invited to serve in. So it is most definitely a two-way street. And it's really that partnership as well of having volunteers in the villages where there is that need. So Peace Corps itself is a government-run program. It was established by John F. Kennedy back in 1961. And you can see here, the mission of Peace Corps is really to promote world peace and friendship by fulfilling these 3 goals. You can see the list of 3 goals here. And as you're reading this, one way to look at this is that, again, we only send volunteers where there's an interest. So volunteers work in over 6 sectors in that area where, they can be an English teacher. Perhaps they are there working with the local farmers initiative on promoting food security issues. Perhaps you're also there as a health volunteer on doing sanitation and hygiene projects. So again, really, we are there to send the technical, related work and to work alongside the partners for that 2-year commitment. Points 2 and 3, it really also goes into the bulk of what Peace Corps is, which is that cross-cultural relationship building, making lifelong friendships with the community members, and really talking about who you are as an American. Maybe this is their first time to also meet with somebody from a foreign country. And so as you're living in there for that 2-year commitment, what better avenue than to really talk about your identity, your background, your family, festivals, customs. And while you're also there, you're going to learn so much about this country that you're living in, and you're going to learn the language, you're going to learn about the festivals. So again, it's really almost like all volunteers are cultural ambassadors in essence, because you are there to really share about who you are and vice versa, learning about the people and really bridging that gap between these 2 countries. Many volunteers do some really awesome stuff in the 3rd goal. We actually even have an office called Office of the 3rd Goal. So even if you come back from service, you are always going to be a Peace Corps volunteer. And so many platforms where volunteers can talk about their service, whether it's through using blogs or YouTube, or just even cooking for your family from the local food. So a couple of just requirements on what is necessary to be a Peace Corps volunteer. As you can see on the top bar here, because Peace Corps is a federal agency, we do ask for all volunteers to be a US citizen, at least 18 years old. And you can also be a US citizen or a naturalized citizen. So there's a bit of a caveat with that. Usually in a given year, we have over 7,000 volunteers who are out in the field. You can kind of see at the bottom of that slide there, due to the pandemic, there are no volunteers out in the field as of now. So programs have been suspended, but we can talk a little bit more about that later as far as what the next steps are going to look like. So usually in a given year, we have over 7,000 volunteers. And then up to this last March, when we had to evacuate all volunteers, we had over 240,000 who have served up to. Just a couple more other cool stats here. Again, because we have that 18 years minimum, there is no upper age limit to serving. So for those of you with grandparents, aunties, and uncles who are looking to make a difference or looking for a way to serve, let them know about Peace Corps. We have one of our oldest volunteers who is an 86-year-old woman who I believe served in Morocco. And she is what we call our Peace Corps guru, since she is just so awesome. So again, there's no upper age limit. And Peace Corps is always striving to make sure that we can represent the diversity of America. So we do have that 34% serving who are minorities, but we're always trying to do the best we can to really make this opportunity available for folks from all sorts of backgrounds. And one more thing to note is that we do have programs which do require a bachelor's degree. So 95% of our programs do have that requirement for having a bachelor's degree. There might be some caveat also with either having that bachelor's or having 3 to 5 years of professional experience. So there's a little bit of flexibility on some of our programs as well. But for those of you here today who are already undergrads at a UC school, keep that up, because we definitely have programs for you after you graduate. So just a quick snapshot of where our volunteers have served worldwide. This is just a great overview of the regions. We have Inter-America and Pacific region. We have Africa. We have European, Mediterranean, and Asia. So I think today, all of our panelists, and including myself, I think we all represent a different region here, which is pretty cool. Sometimes I do get questions on this slide about like language requirements. And in regards to language requirement, we have so many countries that do not require a previous knowledge of that language that you'll be speaking in that country. And again, during that 27-month commitment, the first 3 months of that is going to be all that training that takes place. So that includes the language learning, the technical learning, as well as the cultural training as well. And so you are going to be learning a brand new language when you arrive to that country. I'm sorry, the local language, but brand new for you, because you may not have taken class in this before, but you're going to be an expert in it. Although with that said, there are some countries that do require a foreign language knowledge. And specifically, that would be for countries in South America, Central America, and Mexico, where they will look for candidates with a prior knowledge of Spanish. No need to be a fluent or native speaker, but if you have taken at least 2 college semesters of that course or 4 years back in high school, then you can utilize those skills as well for that to meet that requirement. And finally, we do have some countries in West Africa that does have French-speaking requirement as well. And we can definitely talk more about that later. Just a quick overview again of all of our sectors. Again, we have 6 sectors where our volunteers have worked in. I think in the past, whenever I talk to candidates, they think Peace Corps only operates with education and teaching English, but that is not the case at all. You can see here, we have agriculture, youth and development, education, environment, health, and community economic development. And so essentially, while you are there as a volunteer for those 2 years, you are going to be expected to work within that primary assignment. So day-to-day life will look like you are working within the environment sector. But as other panelists have mentioned today, there's a huge plethora of opportunities to work within the secondary assignment as well. I think for a lot of folks who are there living on a day-to-day basis, you're going to meet so many people who might be interested in working on different projects with you. So for example, when I was in Nepal, I was a health volunteer and, doing a lot of stuff with nutrition, education, and sanitation and hygiene. But towards my second year, I had a group of farmers who were really interested in working with me for oyster mushroom production. And as someone who had no agriculture background whatsoever, I learned their ways and I was like, oh, this is such a great project. And additionally, I was able to do a grant writing project that allowed them to leverage their skills into selling and distributing oyster mushrooms at a bigger marketplace. So again, if there's a need in that community and you are also interested and passionate about that project, definitely a great place to collaborate on those. You also definitely find more information on each and every one of our sectors and what the desired skills are, what the required skills are. all on our website. So I'll be sure to link that into the chat box momentarily. So you do have options to serve. We are currently taking applications, and we do not have a specific apply by date as of now. So for those of you here today who are seniors, if you are interested in departing tentatively next year, you can definitely start your application process whenever you are ready. I highly encourage you to also work with a local recruiter near you, because they are also with so much, experience, and they can talk your ear off about what life is like as a volunteer. So, not only that, but also work with you through the process of figuring out which projects will be a good fit, helping you out with your resume, so on and so forth. But I do want to mention here that as far as the re-entry process is going, we're very much, doing a country by country assessment. So looking at each and every countries that we have that partnership with, to make sure that they will be ready to invite volunteers into their field again. And so we're very hopeful, but we are looking at anywhere from mid-2022 onward, and that can still change again, depending on the country reopening process. So we really appreciate your flexibility, but this is the first step. Since you are all here today, this is a great way just to stay engaged with us and connected to Peace Corps and hear more about the stories that we have. All right, so just a couple more slides on my end. This is just to kind of show you the overview of what it looks like from the moment you are on our website and after you hit that submit button all the way to departure. So the first step really is to look at just all the programs that we have, get to know what type of, again, the required skills might be for a certain sector or a certain project that you're interested in. And along the process, please do connect with a recruiter as well. There are 2 different ways of applying for Peace Corps, and one of them is to do that general application, which we call our serve where needed most. Even with that application method, for some people who might be like, oh, I'm interested in health and environment and education, and I can't make up my mind, I don't know which one they would need me for. I usually encourage that application method just to do that general way. And you can still indicate your preferences as well when it comes to sector preference or regional preferences. The other way is applying directly to a program. So since you can only do 1 live application at a time, it would either have to be that general application or a direct application to one of our programs. After you submit that application, you will immediately be receiving this automated message with a health history form for you to submit. And this is where you might include things like any food allergies, any medications you might be on, pre-existing conditions. And this is just another way for our staff nurse and for the placement officers to look at which programs or the countries will be a good fit for you to really accommodate to your health needs. Funny story, we've had a couple of people apply directly for a program in Thailand, but on the health history form, they might indicate that they have peanut allergy. And that already is like, okay, we won't be able to consider you for Thailand, but how about Mongolia or Nepal? So that can happen too. Finally, the interview, this is a one-on-one interview with one of our placement officers. And at this point, you will find out which country and project you are currently getting considered for. So you'll be able to do a lot of research, again, connecting with your recruiter at this point to see if they have someone they might know who served in that country. Definitely a great way to just get all that information at that point as well. Also, a side note, right now we have paused on the interviews as well. So if anyone here today has perhaps already submitted an application or they're getting ready to, please do not worry too much if you haven't heard back from placement officers yet. It just might take a little bit longer than normal times. Finally, point 5 to 8, this is where the exciting stuff starts when you receive that invitation. It is now all like sent out via email, but when I applied, I had like a hard copy of a letter, which was so exciting. Yes, Brianna. So again, this is really where your first journey starts. After you get that invitation, you'll be taken through a whole list of checklist items to do, the legal clearance and the medical clearances. You will also be asked to send in your passport so that you can receive a Peace Corps official passport for your work visa. And finally, departure, and again, everybody tends to ask like, oh, do we have to do a training before this? There are a couple of trainings that will happen, but it's not going to be like the intensive training that's going to start until you really arrive to that country. So this is really the flow of all of our, the process of this. Okay, so you might be thinking, so far, Rachel, this all sounds good. What's in it for me? What are the benefits? Let's talk about it. Okay, so we have, again, because Peace Corps is a government-run program, there is no cost associated with becoming a volunteer. Rather, all volunteers will be receiving a living stipend, which also that stipend is very much adjusted to that cost of living and living standards in that specific country. But from that stipend, that's also where you will be able to pay for food and rent to your host family, as well as have enough funds left to do a little bit of traveling within the country as well. When it comes to housing, housing is all arranged for as well from the Peace Corps staff in those countries. So they will find you a host family setup. And you will actually have two different experiences with that. Since the first 3 months, that training period, you'll be with another host family. And then once you are sworn in and sent to your 2-year site, you'll be living with another host family in a whole different location. Volunteers will be receiving medical and dental coverage throughout the entirety of their service. This is a great benefit for those of you who might have loans coming out from undergrad, the student loan deferment. So while you are serving as a volunteer, you will not be making any payments on your federal or private loans. I know I had a lot of loans coming out and I was trying to think, how can I maneuver this? You know, what can I do to pay this off? But being a volunteer, I did not have to worry about that at all. So another great benefit. Vacation time, you'll be receiving 48 days of vacation time altogether. This actually begins after your completion of that 3-month training. So you get 2 days every month that will add up to this vacation time that you can take. It goes without saying that Peace Corps is another wonderful platform to really gain that career skills and training. You know, you are being thrown into this different world and living in the village setting. You're going to acquire on so much skills, whether that be grant writing, cross-cultural, engagement, interpersonal skills, project development and management workshop, serving on a committee, you name it. Like there's so much that each and every volunteer can really utilize that time. Finally, after service, so we actually have a readjustment allowance of $10,000 that is provided for all volunteers who have completed their service. We do have a great benefit program with our partner schools here in the US, with the graduate schools. And that is essentially a tuition discount for the returned Peace Corps volunteers who are interested in studying at their institution. That is another great benefit. I'm currently taking advantage of that as a fellow with American University. So if anyone has any questions on that too, we can definitely talk about it. I'm going to skip a couple of points here just for the sake of time, but one thing I do want to highlight is the federal employment advantages. This is what we call our non-competitive eligibility status. And it is good for up to a whole year after you finish your Peace Corps service. So during that time, if you are interested in applying for any of the federal jobs, you get a little bit of a hiring bump up from the rest of the candidates who might not have that NCE status, as we call it. So we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have on these benefits. And with that said, I will go ahead and pause to see if we had any questions that came up as far on the Peace Corps information. Sakina, did I miss anything? Was there anything that came through the chat box so far?
So far.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much for dropping all those links too. Great. All right, everyone. Well, myself and Sakina will definitely be monitoring the chat box if anything does come up with any questions regards to what I just covered. I know it's a lot of information, so feel free to, have those ready to go. And if not, we can definitely connect after this session as well and answer those questions. But let's get to the fun part. Let's go ahead and hear more about our panelists. Sakina, I will hand the baton to you if you want to introduce Brianna again and take it from there.
Of course. Hello, everyone again. I'm going to welcome Brianna. I'm going to just let her go right into it and tell us all about her experiences because she has so many fun things to talk about.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I served in Mozambique from 2014 to 2016 as a health volunteer. These pictures just show a small snapshot of my life as a volunteer. Rachel, are there 2 slides or is this my 1 slide? Just wondering which pictures are on.
Just one slide, all in one.
Lovely, cool. So as you can see from the map, just in case you don't know where Mozambique is, which is perfectly okay. As Rachel mentioned, when I applied, the only way to apply when I applied was the general application. So I didn't actively choose to be a health volunteer. I didn't actively choose to go to Mozambique, but now having done it, I can't imagine my Peace Corps service in any other country, of course. But so when I first got my invitation to serve in a letter, as Rachel, same as Rachel, I opened it up and they were like, congratulations, you've been invited to serve as a health volunteer in Mozambique. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, so excited. Where is Mozambique? And I had to Google it because I had no idea. I was like, I think it might be in Africa, but I'm not really sure. And so in my Googling, I found out where it was. It's on the southeastern coast of Africa, right across the water from Madagascar, above South Africa, right below Tanzania, and bordered, as you can see, by Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, I believe. But yeah, so, or I think it's actually Botswana. But anyway, Mozambique is twice the size of California, so it's a pretty large country. And if you think about Mozambique being about the size and length of the West Coast, the bottom, the capital is Maputo, and that would be kind of where San Diego is. If you think about UCSD being Maputo, that is where the capital is. And my site, where that star is on the map, I lived in a town, a very, very small, very rural town in northern Mozambique called Cuamba in the province of Niassa. And my town, relative to Maputo on like kind of a West Coast scale, would be where like Seattle is. So I was very, very far away from the capital and from the south and everything. As you can see, like I said, these are some photos from my time in Cuamba. That bottom photo on the right of all of us in those bright pink shirts with those colorful pieces of fabric called capulana wrapped around our waists. Those are some of my coworkers at the organizations that I worked with. As I said, we would do a lot of work specifically in health education around HIV and malaria. And so basically this was our typical like community health worker uniform. We'd wear these bright pink shirts, these baby blue hats, and always like a colorful piece of fabric wrapped around our waists as just typical Mozambican wear. And so anyone knew that if they saw a hot pink shirt and a baby blue hat, they could come to us and ask us any questions kind of health related. We typically led everyday health talks in the community about the symptoms, prevention, and treatment of HIV and malaria, as well as a lot of myth busting for both of those, like how do you actually catch it, how do you actually pass it on, and then also a lot of destigmatization work specifically around HIV, because the stigma against HIV positive people in my town was unfortunately very much so alive and well. So that's kind of what we did on the daily, talking about all these different things at the hospitals, at schools, under mango trees, kind of anywhere and everywhere that we could. But that was just my primary project. All the other pictures are from my secondary projects. As we've mentioned before, secondary projects are kind of the other things that you do. You don't have to. Secondary projects are definitely not required of Peace Corps volunteers, but many volunteers have quite a few because we love our communities and we really want to spend more time getting to know them and really helping in our way that we can in whatever that need is, whatever our community has decided, of course. And so as I mentioned, I had a Reddish group, which stands for Raparigas em Desenvolvimento de Educação e Saúde, which means Girls for the Development of Education and Health. So it was a girls empowerment group. And the top right photo and the bottom left photo are pictures of my girls. That bottom, those are both 2 pictures from a conference that I was able to take them to for Reddish, all in like the province. That bottom left photo, we were teaching, us Peace Corps volunteers were leading a training on how to create reusable pads so that girls wouldn't have to skip school on their periods. So we were teaching them how to sew them and everything like that. And then that top right photo was just at the end of the training. We had all gotten our certificates and we're all very, very excited. I also had quite a few just like casual groups of like kids that would come by and we would just like hang out and we'd color or we'd make crafts or we'd talk English or kind of do anything and everything, dance in my kitchen while I made brownies for them, lots of different stuff. They would teach me. I learned so much from so many kids as well as neighbors and other adults. And then that top left photo, one of the other aspects of that girls empowerment group was teaching about sort of, again, kind of the health component. And so we were talking about the 3 food groups and why they're important and why there are 3 of them and stuff like that. So lots of different things. I think there will be other questions, more pointed questions later on, but that's just a small snapshot of what my Peace Corps service was like in Cuamba.
Thank you so much, Brianna. That's so exciting. I know that every one of us has these great experiences, and I love listening to others. So please continue, everyone, to come to these events with other panelists. And we're going to move on to our next panelist, Alexander Barrera. He will tell us about his experiences.
All right. So, like I said, I served in the Caribbean in the small province of Dajabon, which is situated along the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And it was a fantastic experience, of course, challenging. And, you had to endure a lot of challenges that you face, especially as a foreigner in a different land. But overall, as I was able to progress through my service, and as I developed like stronger relationships and more authentic relationships in my community, everything that seemed so strange and so difficult at first became more natural and more kind of, accustomed for me. And so another thing too that I actually don't really share too much about is my particular site had a Japanese influence. It was called La Colonia Japonesa. And so there was this sort of interesting fusion between Japanese culture and Dominican culture and Haitian culture all together. And it was really cool because, for example, on the weekends, we would do Buddhist prayer, for example, which is not something you would typically associate with the Caribbean, but it's something we would do. But at the same time, of course, we had all the traditional Dominican or Haitian style traditions or foods that you would have. For me, one thing I also like to talk about is how like my service really like impacted me or influenced who I am, because I feel like I get a lot of questions about that. And so for me, in the Peace Corps, one of the things that makes it so difficult for me, or at least in my opinion, was just the fact that everything is so abstract or conceptual. And what I mean by that is, you get placed into the site and then you're asked to kind of just live there for 2 years and really manage like a project on your own, essentially, right? Because you do have like counterparts from that nation. So you do have people you're working with in teams. But as, someone who's probably still learning about the language, the culture, and still has no relationship with the land or with the people in the region, it can be very difficult, right? So for me, of course, I took it day by day. And what I always tell people is like, if you really take your time to build up relationships with people and get to know people, it makes your entire experience so much more joyful and successful, in my opinion. So that's what I did. My first year, I went to each of my neighbors' places, drank coffee with them. I went to birthday parties, I danced a lot and everything, while also trying to build up the foundations of my project, which was essentially educating the population about the amount of pollution in the region, specifically plastic, glass, and so forth, all the trash that would be kind of just tossed aside to the road. And as I was kind of learning about the culture and I became more accustomed to speaking in a way that was more appropriate to the culture, I actually was able to develop strategies around my work that actually kind of hit real hard, right? And so one thing I did that was really successful was I would do a different, sort of like what we're doing now. I would do little workshops and meetings with different people in the community, talking about how like cleanliness in Dominican culture is very important, but it's not necessarily, at least in my community, it wasn't projected out into the public spaces. It was only condensed into the private space of your house. But I would tell people about how, I've never seen a dirty house before. I've never seen a dirty Dominican house, right? So why don't we extend that out to our public and have a clean space that will essentially become like the ideal space, kind of like an ideal for the region, right? And that really hit home really hard for a lot of people. And so we started this campaign called Limpia tu Comunidad, which translates to cleaning the community. And with that sort of campaign, we developed enough interest in the community to then go to the local government, where we created the partnership that I was working on with my primary project to improve the infrastructure in the region. with that, I took a course with the Peace Corps on how to write a grant. I wrote it, submitted it, got approved. And then within the second year, we had the funds necessary to purchase raw materials to trash cans. So all that, of course, started off with just being there and getting to know people, right? And that was before having any idea or throwing out any sort of initiative on the actual goal of the project. But by the conclusion of my service, we're able to install trash cans. You can see in the lower left-hand side right here. And we're able to install trash cans in over 50 locations across 3 different communities. And then how it ties back to how it's influenced me today is I'm actually in the process of starting a company called Local Goals. And in order to do that, I went back to the Dominican Republic to kind of develop like official partnerships with people. And while I was there, actually, it was amazing because I got to see, if you see the lower right hand, all over the island, the same work that I was doing was essentially adopted and then expanded across the entire nation. So all over the island, I was able to see these same trash can models placed all over, of course, endorsed and funded by the national government. So it was really a beautiful thing to kind of see my project go from this small scale project that only influenced a few people in 3 communities to having it expanded across the nation. And I want to say this too, like, you know, my experience with that and the success of it isn't necessarily like exactly what everyone's going to face. So I want everyone to know, you know, this is difficult and challenging, and the success really comes from just enduring and then using that experience to help improve communities back home after you complete service, right? But for me, it was kind of like, you know, a little bit of a beautiful thing to kind of see the work that I did and all the, you know, the hours I placed into planning that project and how it's kind of grown beyond any thought that I ever conceived of for it. And then lastly, I before I go, I wanted to talk about, you know, like this is like your lived experience. It's not just a job, right? So I always tell people, like, when you graduate from college, you know, everyone expects to go into the workforce and then just work from there on there, right? And that's going to be your life. But in my opinion, like the way I kind of viewed my life was I want to live my life for 4 different people, meaning my grandparents. And so I decided to look for a secondary option to kind of jumpstart my career. And that was the Peace Corps. And the beautiful thing about it is, even though you are working full time, of course, you have your project, it's also you're living in a different country. And so you get the opportunity to be able to experience that, right? And experience in a way that is truly authentic and that connects with local people and not necessarily just tourists, right? And so I highly recommend it, even if it's just for that personal development and growth. And that's me.
Thank you so much, Alex. I know one of the questions that I got in the chat box was about it being 2 years, and you touched right on that, where Peace Corps is 2 years because you really need that time to get to know that community, that culture. And you were talking about that's what you did at the very beginning. You first got the language training, but then when you moved into your community, you just made those relationships and built them first before you actually started the work, because you needed to build those relationships just to figure out what kind of work you're going to be doing and how to best help that community. So thank you so much for sharing with that. And now I wanted to ask you guys a few questions from our audience. Let me just look at them really quick. They kind of went up a little bit, but Nikita is asking, how competitive is the application process? Maybe Rachel, you can touch up on that. And are the caps on how many volunteers are sent to each region?
Yes, definitely. So thank you so much for that question, Nikita. And when it comes to the, you know, competition, like the competitive side of Peace Corps, I just want to like reiterate, like we're always looking for qualified and competitive candidates. I think a couple of ways that you can showcase yourself to be a qualified candidate is to have displayed an experience with, you know, volunteer work, right? Like how have you been serving your local community, whether it's here in San Diego or in San Francisco or Santa Cruz? Finding just ways to gain those additional skills of leadership, working with other teams, public speaking, you know, engaging with the public, whether that's with students, or at like senior centers, you know, you get the point. Like just having those skills, even as an undergrad, or even post you know, undergraduate, right? Like if you don't have that right now, like you can still gain that even after you graduate from a UC school as well. So finding those pockets of ways of staying involved, whether it's also through a student-run organization, that's always something that I think all of us recruiters really emphasize for people to kind of look out for those experiences. I know that Sakina also put in the chat box, we do have a partner program with some of the schools with campus ambassadors. So that is another great way to, again, learn about, you know, public speaking. Like we want to find students who can be the foot on the ground at some of these campuses since everything is virtual on our side. So being able to talk to other students about Peace Corps and working with your local recruiter. We also have at UC schools, we have a UC-wide Peace Corps prep certificate program as well. Jay is a fantastic resource for that. And, you know, if you are all interested in that, we can definitely drop the link in the chat box here as well. But again, there's so many ways to be competitive and a qualified candidate. And to the second part of your question, Nikita, with the cap on how many volunteers, there is usually a kind of a ballpark of how many people are invited. I know that sometimes we get about like a 35 cap off on that one cohort. And there can also be multiple cohorts going on at the same time as well for other sectors. So you might have a country such as Zambia, which has multiple sectors, and some of them might have just 35 volunteers, or the other might have 50. So it really depends. But again, if you are looking at it from the lens of just being flexible, right, when you are applying with that general application, I think that's also just a great way to go when it comes to being a competitive candidate through the application process.
Excellent. I think you touched on all of that. So UC Peace Corps Prep program is definitely available for you, and that Campus Ambassador program as well. All right, and then we have a question for Brianna. Maybe you can answer this one about, you know, did you have time? What did you do during your time off, and how often did you travel? Where did you go? What did you do during that time?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. In terms of like what I did during my free time and everything like that, and travel and stuff. So as Rachel mentioned, you do get that living stipend every month, which is about that equivalent of a teacher's salary. So generally speaking, it's more than enough to live on for food and travel and incidentals and stuff like that. And so I was actually able to travel quite a bit throughout Mozambique, because you also accrue those 2 days of vacation time per month, just like a normal job. Better in some cases than a normal job. And so you can really kind of decide how you want to use that vacation time. You can bank it all up and go on a really big trip. I know I had a lot of friends who served with me who decided to bank up that time and come home halfway through their service, use that vacation time to vacation home, because homesickness is a valid thing to feel. 2 years is a long time. Any of us on this panel can tell you, can like attest to that. And so if you want to get that homesickness itch scratched, you can definitely use your vacation time to do that. Obviously, it is on your own dime. It is vacation. But if you wanted to, you could. So I had friends who came back for like the holidays, got a hug from mom, took a hot shower, ate some in and out because we're all from California, and then went back to Mozambique, kind of rested and rejuvenated and like ready to finish their Peace Corps service. For me, I was like, sorry, fam, y'all are going to be here when I get back. And I have no idea when I'm back in this part of the world. So I used all of my vacation time to travel, both around Mozambique and to a couple of the surrounding countries. So I was able to travel. For example, my first Christmas in Mozambique, I didn't come home, but instead I went on a safari through the Serengeti in Tanzania, and it was, to date, the coolest Christmas I've ever had. I didn't get to see my family, but I saw elephants and lions and giraffes and zebras. So like, you do you. That vacation time is there for you to use. I was also able to travel to Malawi for a music festival that just happened to fall on my birthday, my second year, which was super cool. I was able to go to Namibia and go sandboarding and skydiving. I was able to go to South Africa, go on another safari, go wine tasting, fun stuff like that. Obviously those like kind of more big ticket things like the safari and the skydiving and the wine tasting and the music festival and stuff, like I did have to pay for those sort of bigger tickets and stuff out of my own personal money that I kind of came to Peace Corps with and stuff from my own personal bank account. But any traveling that I did within country, some of it even like outside of country, I was able to use that Peace Corps living stipend if I just like budgeted and everything like that. And I was like, I'm going to make a choice to eat some rice and beans this month so that I can use some of my Peace Corps money to go on a safari and everything like that. So yeah, I was able to travel a lot around Mozambique, mainly the north, because that's where I was, as we saw, it's very, very big, and to a couple of the surrounding countries as well. So I'm forever grateful for that. And I was able to travel to see other volunteers at their sites in Mozambique, which was also super cool because no site is like the same. They're all so different. I lived in a very rural place. It was such a different experience visiting someone who lived in a very urban place, and everything like that. So fun. Great question, though. Travel is definitely one of the sort of perks about being a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yeah, I love that too. And, I was like you, Brianna, I didn't want to go back to the US because I was like, this is my time to go and explore, but I had a lot of visitors. My parents came and visited me. So I made them come. They're like, I told them if they wanted to see me, they needed to come see me. And they did. They actually were one of those super parent volunteers that came in that decided they want to stay the whole.
Uh-oh.
And they stayed and ended up being part of my community and doing some conversation clubs and helping out and things like that. So you can, one of our goals is to share our experience, and you can share that partially just by having friends and family come visit you so that they get the opportunity to see those communities that you served in. So thank you so much, Brianna, for sharing. Also, I wanted to plug in that, we don't have that much money to, travel like luxuriously, right? But we have all those other volunteers around that will give you a couch and let you stay at their place, and they will come back and stay at your place. So that is really exciting way to travel and to meet people because you're going to meet their community as well. Alex, would you like to add anything there with your travel experiences?
I mostly stayed in my country of service because, each and every country, I think they have different rules for their volunteers. And for us, it was like a little more challenging to travel to a different country, especially for Haiti, because it was our neighboring country. Even though I lived maybe 200 meters away from it, I could have easily just ran into the country of Haiti, or swim across the river. But anyways, I traveled a lot, honestly. I had a little weekend getaway spot, which is the beach picture you see right there. That was my little meditation space. It was about 50 cents to get there. So I would go there. I would spend a few hours there, meditate, go for a run, eat some really good fried chicken, and then go back home. And then, go back and eat rice and beans at the house, right? And that was one of my little free time whenever I had free time to go do. And then also, I had a lot of good friends that I made, and we'll go we'll go to go dancing, right? Because dancing is a big part of the culture. So on Saturdays or Sunday nights, we'll go to go dancing. I didn't really see too many volunteers, but when we did, we hung out so much, and it's so weird because some of my best friends, I would consider them brothers and sisters and stuff. We would see each other maybe 3 times a year at the most, but when we were together, we were really connected. It was just an interesting sort of vibe, right? But yeah.
Thank you so much, Alex. I know as a return Peace Corps volunteer, we have this instant connection with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, Brianna, Alex, all of us had not known each other until we came back from Peace Corps, and yet we feel like we know each other. We are all very close and have this instant connection as well. So it's this camaraderie, this group that is just knows each other almost because we've gone through such familiar experiences in a sense, different but familiar. Also, I love that you touched upon, both of you, about just self-care too. There's times that you need to have that self-care time, whether it's going to the beach and meditating, traveling with your friends, seeing other volunteers, going out to a concert on your birthday, right? All of these things are really part of self-care that you do want to kind of incorporate. So that will be part of, your whole like immersion into that in that culture and really experiencing it in a more positive way. So thank you guys so much for sharing. Rachel, there is a question. I would like, if you don't mind answering it, about are there shorter programs than 27 months?
Yes, yeah, I see the question from Karina, and I would say so. We have two different types of Peace Corps programs, but the one that we are talking about here today is a 27-month program. So this would be like a consecutive amount of service. So you would have to be able to commit to that full entirety of 27 months. Although if you want to serve, extend your service, you can do that too, up to 5 years and 1 year increments as well. So it would have to be that full 27 months of commitment time. Although we do have another program called Peace Corps Response, which is more of our short-term, high-impact programs. They do tend to call for people with a master's degree or qualifying years of work experience, whether that's like 5 to 7 years. So those do tend to be a lot more competitive. Also, they don't have as big of a cohort as the 27-month programs do. So it is very different in nature. Sakina or myself can definitely drop in a link for the Peace Corps response. So if anybody here is interested in that, we do have another set of recruiters and placement officers for that too. But yes, I would say most like undergraduates who are finishing up college definitely go with that Peace Corps, the 27-month commitment one, just to gain that firsthand experience with doing Peace Corps projects.
Can I add something to that? I always tell people this, right? Like 2 years sounds like a long time, like a commitment, but it's a job. So there's 2 years of professional experience. But also, like, if you think about it, you probably spent already 2 years in college at least. And that time just went by so fast. And the same kind of rule applies to this. You know, once you're there, even though it seems like a commitment when you're applying for it, when you're there, the time just flies by, right? And before you know it, you're already ending your service. So that's just another thing to also take into consideration.
Thank you. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask them. I have one question for you guys, and Brianna or Alex, or even Jay, if you want to answer this, since you're a return Peace Corps volunteer yourself, is, you know, what was that village like? I mean, or your community, meaning, did you have phones, service? How did you interact with other, like your family back home? And tell me a little bit about your housing.
Yeah, so like I said, I lived in a very rural town. So, and that is one thing to definitely note. You're living at the level of the community that you're living with. So if your community has running water, you do too. If they don't, you don't. And so that was the case with mine. We did have electricity. It was pretty spotty. It was always off on Sundays. No one really knew why. And then it was just like prone to go out kind of whenever. So I just always had candles on deck in case it just kind of went out. And I was like, cool. I always had I had a solar charger to charge a solar battery. So if power went out, I could still charge my phone or my laptop if I really needed it. But also if the power went out, I was like, okay, cool. It's a sign from the universe to like get out of my house and like go talk to my friends or go do some chores or maybe like go get some water, whatever. I didn't have running water. I did have to carry my water in a bucket on my head for 2 years. I will not lie to you. It's never something that I looked forward to doing, going to carry water at 5 a.m. in the morning, because that's when everything ran. But my balance got really good. My arms have never been so toned. And I definitely feel like it earned me some like kudo points with my community because they saw me every single morning doing the same thing that they all were doing as well. In terms of being able to communicate with my family back home, technology has come so far since its inception in 1961, or even since Sakina served and everything. So I was able to bring my iPhone with me to give you all an idea. I brought the latest model, it was the iPhone 4. And at that time, I was still able to like WhatsApp and everything back home. I didn't have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was not a thing in Mozambique. It was not even an idea. But you did have like cell phone providers and stuff. So I just buy a SIM card for the local cell phone provider, stick it in my iPhone, and I could buy pay-as-you-go internet if I wanted to. So I could definitely WhatsApp, iMessage my family back home. I could access Facebook and Instagram if I wanted to. I used a little bit more of my internet. And then I could also Zoom, Skype home if I wanted to. I just, again, had to like budget for that because it would blow through my internet really fast. But in general, still pretty simple to be able to keep in contact with my family back home.
And definitely, I mean, I agree to that. You know, if I can just add on into it, you know, I feel like a big part of my personal development was because of my host family. My host brother Daji, like, you know, he was a single father, and at that time, I was internally and subconsciously like really enduring a battle of essentially a battle in my mind whether I was worthy enough to ever be a father. And so it was a huge insecurity of mine that I wasn't even entirely aware of until I like had this experience to really like dive into my subconscious in that sense, or like go into a period of self-discovery. And so, like, you know, I really cherish that. You know, when I went back this summer, I was able to go hang out with my family. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring my own daughter with me to that trip. So that's definitely something I look forward to doing in the future. And I definitely also want to buy a house there. So that's one of my life goals, is to buy a house back in my own village.
That's awesome. I love that you shared that you have such a deep connection with the people that you serve with. And one of the questions was, you know, do you see that host family? What's that connection after you leave? And I will say Alex definitely has that connection. Brianna has that connection. I think is it your goddaughter or god's son?
Yeah, so one of my neighbors, she was my best friend while I served. Her name was Vivi. She had a baby while I was in service, and she named her daughter Brianna, and then asked me if I would be her madrina, which is her godmother, which I'm still completely floored, and it's probably one of the biggest honors I've had. I mean, it is the biggest honor I've had in my life. Might be the biggest honor I ever have. And it was amazing. And so I was able to participate in like those sort of first year big milestones culturally and just like normal baby wise and everything with baby Brianna. And now baby Brianna is Brianina. She's like 6 now, which is crazy. And so I'm still, again, thanks technology, able to keep in contact with Vivi and get photos of Brianina and stuff as she like goes off to school now, which is crazy. But yeah, the relationships that you make in Peace Corps are what Peace Corps is all about.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And Jay, I would love for you to share your last tidbits, and then we'll have Rachel close out for us.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, man, this hour flew. This is such great conversation. I love meeting Brianna and Alex and you, Sakina, to hear your stories. Just real quickly, I served 1,000,000 years ago. in the mid-90s, I was an urban youth development volunteer in a small country called Belize. And I served in Belize City, and it was actually kind of a mix between urban youth development and environmental education. I ran a conservation corps for city kids, and we would go out and do, beach cleanups and, conservation corps activities and the like. And I loved it because I lived in a big city. I lived in Belize City, which was kind of, urban and all of that, but I got to travel a lot and go camping with the teens and just really have a wonderful experience throughout the small country of Belize, but there's a lot to see there. And I did that for 2 years. And I loved it so much, I didn't want my time to end. So I did an extension to the Republic of Palau, which is a little tiny group of islands in Micronesia in the Pacific. And my job was to start an environmental sector in their library system. So, and that experience, I lived very rural, reminded me of what you were saying, Brianna, just, no electricity and carrying water and, all of that. And that's kind of what I was looking for my extension project. My experience is different. It's not very normal. Most people, if they do extend their service, they'll stay in the same country. I don't know. I just got lucky and got Palau. I love both places. I consider them both dear to my heart. So I could talk on forever, but I know we're at time. So I'm going to give the final word to Rachel to close us out.
Gosh, I agree, Jay. I feel like we can go on and on talking about Peace Corps, and I truly appreciate you organizing this for us, and another way for us to talk with UC students all, California-wide. Thank you so much, Sakina, for moderating this. Thank you, Brianna and Alexander, for your stories. I am ready to sign up again, y'all. I'm like ready to go. Like, let's do this. But just for the attendees who joined us today, thank you so much for being here and for all your questions. Again, this is just another way, your first part of the journey. You know, feel free to connect with us. The QR code on this slide will take you straight to that Connect with a Recruiter. Or if you do that event sign-in link, then we can reach out to you as well. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.